Hello everybody, Jeremy here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Sony QX10 lens style camera. I had this camera for about a week now, and I did a video about it, just showing off the beginnings of the device, the basic nature of it, why it was created, what's it used for, and all that stuff. But now that I've had a chance to play with it for a week and take it with me and just kind of get a feel for how this thing actually really works out there in the real world, came away with some thoughts about this camera. And it really just brought me back to when I look at the videos for this camera and the QX100 and all the news posts and blog posts and everything about it. There's always a decent amount of people in the comment section, and they say things like, wouldn't it be easier to just X? Or why wouldn't you just Y? In relation to, why would you buy this camera? Why wouldn't you just go out and take that money and just buy a regular point and shoot? Or in the case of the QX100, it costs $500. Why not just go get yourself a decent mirrorless camera, or go out and get yourself a entry-level DSLR you can get for that price, with a kit lens? Why waste your time with this? And so I thought about that, and I ended up with the conclusion that this camera, and even the more expensive QX100, these cameras are not for people who need another camera. I think that these cameras are really just the beginnings of a possible evolution. And as with a lot of sort of first generation products, there are always going to be flaws with it that make you wonder, what were they thinking when they made this? And when this goes away, no one's going to care about it. It happens with hardware and software. The first iPhone was like that. Steam was like that, the video game digital distribution service. Within its first year, not that good, but now iPhone, Steam, you love them. So the first go around it's not going to be a walk through the park, as we've seen with these cameras. But yeah, I don't think they're for people who say that they really need another camera. They just kind of want to be in on the cutting room floor. They want to see what's this possible next step for mobile photography. And if this actually takes off, maybe not exactly this model, but this concept, when it is refined and when it's tweaked to be more reliable, perhaps from the likes of Nikon and Canon, they can get into the game, and then they can do things to make having something like this actually something that can be like your smartphone, that's like, wow, I don't really know how I got along without this thing before. So, despite its flaws, one of the things I do like about these types of cameras is that it totally changes what our perception is of cameras, because basically cameras themselves haven't changed all that much for decades. The form factors, obviously change. They get a little bigger, they can get a little smaller, they can become more compact, putting them in your phone and stuff. But the basic ergonomics stay the same. Whether it's a DSLR or a film camera or mirrorless camera, really all you do, either look on the screen or look through the viewfinder, press the shutter, and there you go. Our cameras are always one solid piece. But the fact that we can just have this connect to our phones wirelessly and get some crazy angles with these and use them for different purposes. If you wanted to connect this to a tripod and use it as another video camera for some B-roll footage, or if you wanted to strap on some sort of MacGyver-esque contraption and use this kind of like an unofficial GoPro or something like that, you can do that. It takes some creativity to figure out what you're really going to be using this for, because as far as practicality, taking this out in everyday real world use, even for me, who was a really big proponent and champion of this camera, I don't think right now we're really quite there. Aside from the Play Memories mobile application for iOS in particular is just terrible. So depending on when you're watching this, I believe it's October the 6th right now. So if you're watching this around that time and you're thinking about getting this camera, just know that make sure there's an update available for the Play Memories app. Read the reviews, see what people are saying, because at this time, the only way that you can use this camera and connect it to your phone or tablet is through the Play Memories mobile application. Yeah, Camera 360, which is another app, is going to support it. Camera Plus is going to support it, but as the time of this video, that's not happening. There is no update at this time. So whenever Sony gets around to it, which is supposed to be sometime this month in October, before you go out and buy the camera, read the reviews, see what people are saying about that app, because right now the app crashes a lot on iOS. It freezes, there's lag, and it really hinders now what I think optically is a pretty decent camera, considering that it's basically the same guts as one of Sony's point and shoot cameras. I believe it was the WX200 is what the lens and sensor of this camera are based off of. And even though it's just point and shoot, you know, it doesn't shoot raw or anything like that. And unfortunately, you don't get a lot of manual controls or any manual controls really over this camera. You know, I think that the onboard processing of the JPEGs is actually not bad, especially since all you're going to be doing with them, or what Sony really wants you to do with them, is to share those photos on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, social media, things like that. Not necessarily to put into a professional portfolio or use this to get some professional work, you know, nothing like that. Just something that you would share with your friends and they would be like, oh, well, that's a pretty nice picture because your camera is better than the camera that's inside of your smartphone. That's really what they want you to use it for. And the pictures that are taken with this are actually pretty good for what it is. You know, I took a picture with this camera in this room in low light. You know, forget about this light that's shining on me right now. I took a picture handheld in low light of some of the things behind me, and when I look back at it, you know, I think I had it on superior, intelligent superior, or one of the green auto mode, and it takes a series of pictures and puts them together and gives you what it thinks is the best result. And I didn't think it was all that bad. You know, you may think differently if you know, put into some software and you zoom in 100% and say, what's that? Look at that. It's a noise. You know, whatever. People who share this on social media, it's not going to even matter. You know, so walking around with this thing, you will get looks. People will wonder, you know, what's going on with that? You know, especially if you got your phone in one hand, you got this in the other hand, you're doing all this and stuff, and you know, it's very curious. It just sucks that when you want to show people, like this happened with my mom, I was showing her stuff and I was like, yeah, here, hold the phone, watch this. And then she's like, it's not moving. And I'm like, what? And that's because the app had messed up, and it really makes the product look bad, and frankly kind of makes me feel a little stupid, because it's like, you paid how much for this and it's not working? What was wrong with you when you did that? So Sony can just improve that app. It will vastly improve the usability of this camera. Right now, I can't say take this out instead of your point and shoot, even if it means that you have to wait until you get home and put your memory card into your computer and share your photos that way, because I think that that will be much less of a hassle than walking around and not being able to take pictures for 10 minutes with this thing without that app messing up if you're on iOS. Android, different story. But if you're on iOS like I am, then yeah, that's what you have to deal with. Ergonomically with this camera, as far as how it feels in the hand and everything, well, you know, it's plasticky. It does feel cheap, you know, and if your hands are sweaty up against this plastic, you know, it can feel a little slippery. But you know, one of the things that I think can go into the second generation of this camera to improve it is the way that you hold it. Because right now, this is the top part of the camera. So when you're holding it, when you're going around trying to take pictures of stuff, you're kind of holding it like this, with your thumb having access to the zoom toggle and the shutter button. But you know what? Gravity works against you pretty much the entire time. Because if you want to have a level horizon, you have to make sure that, you know, the camera is as straight as it can be. It's very easy to kind of just let your wrist go for itself because you're trying to have more comfortable access to these buttons here. So, it's one of the reasons why you wear a strap, because you can just, that can happen, and you definitely don't want to break the thing. But it feels a lot more comfortable if these buttons were actually meant to be held this way. Because if you hold the camera basically on what is its side right now, your thumb is directly below the zoom toggle and the shutter button. So you're holding it like this, you're kind of cupping it, and it makes it so that it's more comfortable. It's like you're pointing something, you can just do all this stuff, you got a pretty good grip on it, as opposed to kind of the tarantula-esque claw, and you're just, all the while it's just kind of slipping like that. So if you turn it this way, it doesn't do too much if you wanted to, take a portrait shot, because you would have to turn it the other way and then you have the same problem again. But I think most people take pictures in landscape mode, which is the long way across, as opposed to up and down. So if we can just take this and just, take pictures this way, as opposed to twisting the arm and having it feel kind of stiff and a little bit awkward like that, I think it will be much easier, much better to actually walk around and hold with one hand. So that being said, I have been able to get some pretty easy and interesting shots with this wide angle lens, just being able to get down low and getting a pretty cool angle shot, simply by twisting my wrist just a little bit. And if I were using a regular camera, that would require getting pretty close to the ground, twisting my body and all like that. So that's one of the applications that this had. I saw like an opening of a sewer, and I was so tempted to just take this camera and just stick it down in there and take a picture. But where I live, there's pretty big spiders. I'm terrified of them, and I don't know what's down in those little sewer hole thingies, so I decided against it. But I was like, wow, right off the bat, I found a pretty unconventional use for this camera. Stick it in places where you can't normally get cameras into, especially if it's a DSLR with a lens hood on it, and see what you can get from there. So anyway, should you buy this camera? Don't buy it if you are looking for an upgrade. Don't buy it if you need another camera. Buy it if you just want to have a tool in addition to the cameras that you already have. This is something that I don't need. I already have a mirrorless camera and a DSLR to satisfy whatever need I might have to go out and take pictures. I really don't need this. I do know that it is very convenient to have the 10 times optical zoom and being able to share those photos very quickly and everything, but the software is so bad, it kind of is like, well, man, it's not even all that worth it, and a lot of times, I can feel like I can just maybe wait until I get home, or just use my iFi card to transfer the pictures to my phone and then share them that way. That's another big thing. Spend $35 on the 8 gig iFi card and kind of get the same, quick sharing capabilities, although you won't have the same optical quality. So that's something to keep in mind. You can have the iFi card and you can get the transfers, pretty quickly, but you can't get the quality at the same time. So yeah, I think this is really just something for people like me who like cameras and would like to have something extra to carry around with them and just kind of have a cool little toy to play with. But I don't think at this point it's something that the mass market can really jump into and say, hey, I want to have this thing. It's a really, really good first effort, but if it were possible to make it a little bit smaller, because this thing really it can fit in your pocket, but it can't fit in your pocket with, while it's attached to your camera. Then again, not a lot of cameras can, except for little compact cameras. I suppose that can happen, but you have to sacrifice, considering what this is. It can fit into a jacket pocket, just fine, but I would like to see maybe some Bluetooth connectivity as opposed to Wi-Fi. Maybe that will make it more reliable. I'm not too sure. But I do hope that these are successful. I hope that Sony updates the software and have it working really well across platforms. I hope that third-party app developers think that it's worth it to invest their time and resources into supporting this camera and the QX100 and add more features that Sony did not add, such as the ability to manually control your ISO and your shutter speed, and maybe even throw in some stuff like, hey, there's a panorama mode, things like that. Things that people really like filters. Put some live filters on it. If you want this to be for regular everyday consumers, like filters, give them filters. So they can post them to Instagram and stuff like that. Even if you don't like filters, whatever, because the majority of people do. So, first generation product, I still like it because it's neat and I'm a tech guy and I like cameras and everything. But as for me, trying to get someone that I know, like one of my friends or like my girlfriend or something, to say, hey, you can have better pictures if you just carry around this $250 camera, they're not going to go for it. And for good reason, they're not going to go for it, because the minute that it messes up, they're like, hey, this is crap. I want my old camera back. So yeah, those are just some more elaborate or detailed thoughts about the QX10 as it is right now on October 7th. Or October 6th, I think it is. I don't know my dates. 2013. So yeah, I have this. I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to send it back. But if you've got some questions that you just want answered about this camera, because you're still sort of dabbling in the idea of getting it and you're kind of on the fence, just go ahead. You can leave a comment, and I'll be sure to respond to your question. If I don't know the answer, I'll just tell you I don't know, but hopefully I will know. So yeah, thanks for watching this nearly 20-minute video. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to ask me a question if you want, and thanks for watching. I'm Jeremy, and I'll see you next time.